Hello everybody and welcome back to TTS episode 5 now. So we are making our way through these episodes. After some delay because of spring break, we are back now talking about the MLB offseason with the regular season upon us. Opening day is just a couple days away now. I would like to jump back and look to some of the recent offseason acquisitions and talk about some of the biggest winners and losers from the offseason. Now I will say, I'm admittedly not the biggest MLB fan, but I'm working on getting into it more. My biggest gripe with Major League Baseball right now is the lack of a salary cap or basement on franchises. It allows teams to be absurdly overpowered while also allowing franchises like the former Oakland Athletics to be stupidly cheap all at the same time, and it creates such an imbalance that it's only gotten glaringly worse in recent off seasons. But with my little TED Talk over, let's hop into this. We're going to start off by talking about the National League winners, and then talk about some American League winners, and then we will do the same with each respective league's losers. Now starting up first for the NL winners, we have the very predictable Los Angeles Dodgers. Now this one was pretty self-explanatory, and this is exactly the problem that I was talking about. There's a clear issue in the MLB where big markets like LA, who have this absurdly large amount of money to spend, are actually allowed to spend all that money. I'm sure that if the NBA had similar salary cap rules, it would look a lot different and probably worse than it does currently. Anyways though, the Dodgers won the sweepstakes for two of the best available starting pitchers in former San Francisco Giant Blake Snell and the most coveted Japanese pitcher in Roki Sasaki. Now for Blake Snell, my apologies. He came back in July after struggling through injuries early in the season, and his early season stats show how much he struggled. Through 6 starts, he had a 9.51 ERA, which is pretty on the nose how bad that is. However, though, when he returned from injury, in 14 starts, he posted an absurd 1.23 ERA, including a complete game no-hitter in which he walked only 3 batters and struck out 11. Now for Roki Sasaki, his stats are equally as impressive. Across 4 seasons in the Japanese Pacific League, which alongside the Japanese Central League is highly regarded as being one of the top leagues in the world, these were some of his stats. And mind you, he was 19-23 during the time of this. He went 30-15 with a 2.02 ERA and a 0.883 WHIP, or walks and hits allowed per inning pitched, across 69 nice games pitched. Now adding those two guys to a rotation that already features Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and a potentially healthy Shohei Ohtani, it should be considered almost illegal. And then on top of that, they added on relievers Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, which could give LA an absolutely devastating bullpen, as well as an absolutely historic starting rotation. Just truly absurd stuff out of LA, and truly absurd stuff for LA. The Dodgers are going to be dangerous. And then on top of this, they added on outfielder Michael Conforto and then second baseman Ha-Seong Kim. They could also add some extra production to a lineup that just won a World Series. So barring anything crazy, barring like if they stay healthy, this team is looking unbeatable. It looks like it's going to be very unlikely and very tough to try and beat this team in a 7-game series, but you never know. Moving on, however, we have the New York Mets. Once again, another pretty self-explanatory one. They snagged Juan Soto from the crosstown rival Yankees, and that was very unexpected. And it could be a move that could pay dividends for the Mets. I mean, Juan Soto is a historic player. His 7.9 wins above replacement, better known as WAR, ranked him 6th out of every single player in the MLB last season. So for the Mets to be able to re-sign Pete Alonso and then add on a 26-year-old superstar who is already in his prime was a huge win for the Mets. And then on top of resigning Alonso, the Mets wisely made sure to keep pitcher Sean Manaea and outfielder Jesse Winker, a name I don't like as a Phillies fan. Now the Mets are clearly pushing to create a dynasty and build upon the rather surprising end to the 2024 season, one that saw them fall just a couple games short of the World Series. And there is a great chance that come October, two of the best teams in the MLB are the Mets and Dodgers. Now moving on to the last winner for the NL, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now this was pretty surprising. They acquired starting pitcher Corbin Burnes. I don't think anyone really saw this one coming, but Corbin Burnes has been pretty damn good the last 5 seasons. He's either been a Cy Young candidate or a winner. And last year, he started 32 games for the Baltimore Orioles, and in those games he accumulated a 15-9 record while tossing to the tune of a 2.92 ERA and 1.096 WHIP. So adding him to a rotation of Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Brandon Pfaadt give the Diamondbacks one of the best rotations in baseball that people really aren't talking about right now. And another very smart move they made was adding former Guardians first baseman Josh Naylor, who I really liked. I liked watching him last year for Cleveland. He's coming off a great all-star season. He knocked over 31 home runs last season, and he accrued a 118 WRC plus, which for those who don't know, that stands for weighted runs created plus, and puts every player in the league at a baseline of 100. So with a 118 WRC plus, Naylor is 18% better than the average MLB player at creating runs for his team. I really like that stat. I like the stats like that, so you'll probably hear a little bit more about those in the future. But those two additions of Naylor and Burnes should be very big contributors for the Diamondbacks in the upcoming season. Now up next, we are moving on to the American League and our AL winners. I'm going to start off with the redacted Athletics. I mean, I don't think you can call them Las Vegas yet. They don't want to be called Las Vegas yet. They're currently just trying to be called the Athletics, and I think almost every broadcaster is ignoring that in favor of still calling them Oakland. But I find it kind of funny. The Athletics move out of Oakland and then immediately started spending money on their roster. Like, what the hell? I think a lot of people pointed that out, and it just, I mean, like, yeah, you're going from Oakland to Las Vegas. You want to start making some money, making money moves. It just, come on, like, this is what the people in Oakland wanted. So it makes me angry a little bit for Oakland fans, but, you know, they made good moves. So adding former Mets starting pitcher Luis Severino, as well as taking a bit of a waiver on former Tampa Bay Rays starter Jeffrey Springs, those were two moves I really liked. Now for Severino, he's coming off a very solid 2024 season that saw him accumulate a 3.92 ERA across 182 innings pitched for the Mets. So he should immediately bolster a rotation that ranked 26th in ERA and 29th in strikeouts produced. Now for Jeffrey Springs, he was primed for a breakout 2023 season before torn UCL threw all of that away. He returned this past season, 2024, but only pitched in 33 innings before being shut down due to elbow fatigue. In those innings, however, Spring averaged a 3.27 ERA with 37 strikeouts against 11 walks. He went 2-2 in those games. If Springs is able to return to the form and health that the A's have wanted from him, or the A's need from him, the A's really did make two savvy additions to its starting rotation that should make improvements. Now on top of that, they also added relief pitcher Jose Leclerc, and that should provide them with a good setup man between their relievers and their superstar closer, Mason Miller. Now I found this pretty interesting. I was looking at Leclerc's stats. Despite an increase in ERA last season, his fielding independent pitching, or FIP, was the lowest it has been in 3 years. Now, it's really interesting because the other 2 seasons where his FIP was actually higher, he averaged around a 2.75 ERA across 114 2/3 innings, but in this past season, with a lower FIP, his ERA ballooned up past over 4. So I can see his ERA taking a dip back down to around that 2.75, maybe that 3 number, and I think that should be a very good addition for the relieving the bullpen for the A's. So I think, no major subtractions were made to this roster. The A's had a shockingly good first offseason in Las Vegas. Still feels weird to say, and it's going to feel weird to say for a while, I can imagine, but whatever, just leave Oakland and then immediately start spending all the money you want, do whatever you want, Oakland, now Las Vegas. I hope they keep getting called Oakland because of this. Anyways, though, moving on. Another winner that I have for the AL, or the American League, is the Boston Red Sox. Now, Boston must have seen LA spending the absurd amount of money that they have been spending, and finally they decided to start doing the same because they have some money to spend, and they finally used it. They acquired third baseman Alex Bregman, which I think is going to be huge for them. Now, last season, Bregman's stats were slightly down in terms of RBI and on-base percentage, as he went from 98 RBIs to 75, and his OBP dropped by nearly 50 points. However, Bregman should continue to rake at Fenway Park and potentially improve upon a slugging percentage that ranked 42nd in all of MLB last year. If he can bring the OBP back up to the around 360 range like he was at in 2022, this could be a fantastic addition for Boston. And on top of that, adding Garrett Crochet and taking a waiver on a guy like Walker Buehler could both be good additions for the rotation. For Crochet, he's coming off a career year for the the Chicago White Sox. But don't let the horrible team distract you from the fact that his 4.1 WAR was 14th amongst all pitchers last year, which is really funny when you think about the fact that Chicago was horrible and had one of the best pitchers. Like, just really funny to me. However, though, he had a 3.58 ERA and a 1.068 WHIP across 146 innings. That makes this a very attractive addition for Boston. Now for Buehler, he's coming off his worst season as a big leaguer, posting... I just knocked my mic out for a second, so we're going to pretend like that never happened. For Buehler, he is coming off his worst season as a big leaguer, as he posted a horrendous 72 ERA+, which if you were following along, it means he was 28% worse than the average pitcher in terms of earned runs allowed. However, I'm not quite ready to give up on him yet. I mean, after all, Buehler is just a couple years removed from a season in which he posted a 171 ERA+, so over almost a 100-point switch here. And this was across 202 innings pitched, and it saw him finish 4th in that year's Cy Young race. Now, this past season, he was returning from his second Tommy John surgery, and it looked rough. But as Dodgers fans would attest, he was really strong for them come playoffs and come that World Series run. If Buehler is healthy and able to build upon the momentum he gained from his playoff performance, the addition of him and Crochet to the rotation could be huge for Boston. Now lastly, my third and final winner out of the AL was the Kansas City Royals. My biggest issue with Kansas City's offseason was their inability to acquire a true pop bat. That's something that lineup desperately needs. However, being able to add Jonathan India should be a solid leadoff hitter in front of Bobby Witt Jr., while also potentially being an everyday starter at second base. And then on top of that, signing Carlos Estevez was really good signing in my opinion. As a Phillies fan, I was hoping he would stay in Philadelphia and they would be able to retain him. But obviously that did not work out. For Estevez, he's a very strong closer level arm that I feel like most bullpens would love to have. He recorded 26 saves last season across his time with the Angels and the Phillies. So to have him and Lucas Erceg on the roster is a true luxury for the Royals. A strong pitching staff stays just as strong and maybe even got a bit better. Now, finally, time to talk about some losers here. We've been too busy yapping about all these winners. Now, I'm going to start off with the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, I was reading this article, and I just couldn't believe it. This team literally acquired no one of note this offseason. Like, look at this graph here. This is just, it's ridiculous when you think about it. There's no one there. Like, yes, I get the idea of tanking, and I get that to tank you typically don't want to bring in talent or anything, but don't you want to at least bring somebody in? Anybody? Like, hello? This is just, it's truly one of the most bizarre things I have ever seen in recent memory, but let the glorious tank roll its way through St. Louis this year. If you know a Cardinals fan, by some chance, give them a hug, because they are in for a rough season. And I feel like I do need to note this. The Cardinals attempted to do one thing, and that was trade off disgruntled star third baseman Nolan Arenado, who despite being on the older end at 33 last season, still produced a 2.2 WAR season for a rather hapless team. And yet, the Cardinals managed to fail at that too. Just absolutely ridiculous stuff coming out from St. Louis. So, very, very easy L to hand to the Cardinals. Next losing team, the Colorado Rockies. They had a rather uneventful offseason, which I feel like I should not be saying for a team that should be presumably looking to avoid their third straight 100-plus loss season. The biggest addition for the Rockies was second baseman Thairo Estrada, whose numbers took a big hit this past season, as he posted a slash line of 217, 247, and 343 that resulted in a putrid OPS, or on-base plus slugging percentage, of 590 and an OPS plus of 68. That's not good, and in case you guys needed to know, that's not good. However, you can be hopeful and point to the fact that the year prior, he posted a much better slash line, 271, 315, 416, for a much more respectable 731 OPS. However, you can still point to a 102 OPS plus that pretty much puts him right dead middle in the pack. I just don't think this move's gonna... Guys, I keep moving my hands around and it keeps messing up my mic. So that's why I have to keep stopping. It's so sad. However, though, someone needs to tell me to stop moving my hands. That's what's doing it. His 102 OPS, like I said, it's dead middle of the pack, and I don't think there's much of a chance this move will be that impactful at all. So I really think it's just really looking at a potential Rockies team that's going to lose another 100-plus games. Who knows, though? Lastly, for the losers, we have the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, after surprising many baseball fans last year with a pretty competitive season that saw the Brewers fall to the hot-handed Mets in the first round, the Brewers followed that up by letting some of their biggest stars either hit free agency or get traded away. Now, some Brewers fans are probably used to this at this point because it's a pretty familiar pattern that I've been seeing, but it has to be frustrating to see the team constantly commit to letting their big-name talent go elsewhere for some more money or anything. I mean, you start off with their shortstop Willy Adames, who smacked 32 home runs for Milwaukee last year en route to posting a 118 OPS and batting in 112 runners. He's now in San Francisco playing for the Giants. Then you have relief pitcher Devin Williams, who after missing 4 months last season due to stress fractures in his back, he returned to pitch a 1.25 ERA across 22 games, recording 14 saves in those games. Like, 14 saves in 22 games, that's pretty solid. Why would you trade him? They did, though. He was traded to the Yankees in exchange for starting pitcher Nestor Cortez, who struggled mightily last year for New York. They also traded him for prospect Caleb Durbin, who I admittedly know nothing about, and cash considerations. In my opinion, this trade will only work out if Nestor Cortez is able to bounce back, or maybe that Durbin guy is pretty legit. But in all, that was just a very, very underwhelming offseason for a Brewers team that had a chance to build upon some good potential that they were showing. But, you know, I digress. Moving on to the AL losers, we'll start off with the Seattle Mariners. So, you know, it's a team that really struggled to create runs last year, so they proceed to go into the offseason and not improve their lineup at all, because why would they? I mean, they signed the now 37-year-old utility infielder Donovan Solano. That's not going to help the offense. I mean, re-signing infielder Jorge Polanco probably isn't also going to be the right move. The veteran infielder mightily struggled in his 11th season in the MLB. His OPS dropped from 780 in his 10th season all the way to 650 last year. Now, if that trend continues, the Mariners will once again be heavily reliant upon their bullpen, rotation, and incredibly rough hitting environment. And for those who don't know, no one really wants to hit in the cavernous T-Mobile Park in Seattle. So maybe that's why they couldn't convince any good offensive talent to come play there. But you got to find someone, and the moves that they did with Polanco and Solano just aren't going to push that needle. So they are going to be heavily reliant upon their pitching staff again. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, up next, we have the Baltimore Orioles. This one's also another pretty self-explanatory placement. The Orioles lost their 2 marquee free agents, Corbin Burns and outfielder Anthony Santander, but it hurts even more when you consider the fact that Anthony Santander left to join the division rival Blue Jays. So it's one thing to lose your 2 top free agents, and then you look at the replacements, it kind of becomes painfully obvious why they got put in this losing category. I mean, they're trying to replace Corbin Burnes with a 41-year-old certified innings eater in Charlie Morton, who I feel like it's a necessity to note that I was 4 years old when this guy first started pitching in the MLB. So what? As well as a 35-year-old rookie pitcher in Tomoyuki Sugano. It just feels like the wrong moves. It feels like that's not going to help their bullpen, and it's not going to be an adequate replacement for Burnes. What I will say is that Sugano did post a 1.67 ERA across 156 2/3 innings in the Japanese Central League last year. So if you were to come into the MLB and doing stuff like that, that signing very well could be one of the best under the radar signings of the whole offseason. And, you know, crazier things have happened, so I could be very wrong here. Sugano could come out and just dominate, but I'm not expecting it. But I'm just not really expecting it. However, last but certainly not least, we have the Cleveland Guardians. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was a big fan of the Arizona Diamondbacks snagging first baseman Josh Naylor from the Guardians, and for Cleveland, I really did not like them losing Naylor. It's never easy to replace someone who bats in over 100 runners in a season, but I will say that while Carlos Santana's batting stats last season were not bad by any means, it's a clear step back from Naylor's production, and especially when you consider the fact that Cleveland just got 11 years older at first base. Like, this was clearly a downgrade. You lost Naylor, who's 11 years younger, was producing at a higher clip, so it just was not a good replacement, but it was a replacement at least. And while Paul Sewald is a quality relief pitcher, I feel like the Guardians were not necessarily dying for that. I feel like they had much more of a need on the offensive side, and the playoffs showed that when they were not able to match up with the offensive firepower of the Yankees. But maybe the Guardians think I'm silly and that they need this pitching help, because the other 3 additions of note for Cleveland all happen to be pitchers. You have 2 starters in Luis Ortiz and John Means, and a second relief pitcher in Slade Sakani. So to me, this was not a really good offseason for the Guardians. While the bullpen and rotation might be very strong, I think the lack of offensive weapons is ultimately going to prove to be too much for them. And they could make another playoff run, but if they do, they're going to fizzle out, and it's going to be because of the lack of offensive power, unless there are some big steps that get taken by some other players like Kyle Manzardo, who has been doing really well in spring training, but who knows? We shall see. Anyways though, there you have it. Those are my winners and my losers from the MLB offseason. Getting up to opening day here, I'm very excited and scared to see which teams make me look completely idiotic coming into the regular season. But if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe if you have not done so already. And until next time, have a great day.